What does a drummer say when he meets a tam? Hi-hat! Hiya kids, how you doing? Once again, apologies for the joke. This week I'm going to be looking at hi-hats. In the last video I made, I asked you why I might keep the hi-hats and cymbals separate from the kick bass and the snare. And in this video I'm going to answer you, or at least tell you my reasons for doing that. I'm also going to be telling you the three most essential roles that I think there are for hi-hats in rhythms and drum patterns. But first I should tell you why I started thinking about hi-hats. As a kid, my brother and I would build camps underneath the desk in our room to have midnight feasts. Tucked in our little den, in the dark, with just the glow of a torch, we had the radio with us and we would listen to David Roots Rodigan.
Here comes Rodigan, the dubwise daddy.
And it was on his show that I first remember being aware of hi-hats and how important they seem to be, particularly how they seem to be emphasised in dubs.
1, 2.
So a lot of my thoughts on hi-hats have come from old roots and dub music. Knowing that, let's start looking at the most universal, essential element of the hi-hat. More than anything else, they keep the time. And certainly when I'm drumming, they anchor me to the beat. So let's start building a pattern with a simple 8th beat. 1 hat hit on every other step. That's it. First element done. Off you go. Cut it short. Walk away now. Or we can now delve a little bit deeper. Wise move to stick around. What we have now sounds a little bit dull, and it's very easy to get lost as to where you are in each bar. Drummers can be quite excitable, and when they get to the beginning of each bar, they tend to get a bit carried away. We can emulate this using velocity, and the notion of velocity brings us to the next essential element of hi-hat lines, the pulse, or the kind of roll that the music and the beat has. Rock hi-hats tend to be quite straight, an accented beat at the beginning, and then all of the other beats tend to be quite uniform. We can do a little bit better than this though. If we drop the velocity on the steps 3, 7, 11 and 15, we can then create a kind of a pulse. Each of the main beats is emphasised, but you are still keeping that 8th time going. Now I want to look at the last element, and that's a drummer's natural incompetence. I mean very careful, subtle skill. As with the kick and snare beats, hi-hats will benefit from some natural variation. And as you can imagine, I do a very similar thing as I do with the kick and drum, using probability and flams. However, I've added an element here, which is the sample length. To get the shuffle that you sometimes hear in hi-hat patterns, we can now fill in every 16th step. But the ones that we are filling in now, we need to reduce the velocity so that they are just barely audible. And if you want to go a little bit further, you could even add in a flam somewhere, a little hi-hat roll. Once we have done that, we add a layer of probability, with the probability of these shuffle steps being really quite low. We could even add some probability on some of the eighth note steps. The final element here is to change the sample length, and the way that you do it on the samples and the tracks is quite different. On the tracks, just hit record and twiddle the sample length knob. And who doesn't like twiddling with a knob? This gives us those crisp, tight hi-hat clicks, as if the drummer's got his foot very heavy on the hi-hat pedal. And then there is some variation where the hi-hat rings a little bit longer, as if the pressure is just loosened off the pedal. And this is the first reason why I keep the hi-hats and the kicks and the snares separate. When I've got the hi-hats on a separate track, I can create this kind of variation without affecting the sound that I've crafted for the kicks and the snares. Okay, so back to programming, and this time we can look at the samples. We can set the LFO to the random setting. And then tweak the LFO rate and the amount in order to get that nice opening and shutting sound. Of course, another reason why it's good to keep the kick, snare and the hi-hats separate is so that you can drop out the kick and snare and just keep the beat going with the hi-hats. And this is a trick that you hear them do in dubs quite often. On the tracks, you can take this idea a little bit further. We can keep a consistent hi-hat pattern while having variation on the kicks and the snares that run underneath it. We retain the continuity of the groove while making the beat ever more complex with more interesting kick and snare lines. Christmas is coming and I'm wondering what I should do for my Christmas special. Last year, Mrs. Bolus chose a Christmas bauble for me to use as the only object I was allowed to make a Christmas tune from. So this year, I thought I'd give you the choice. Do you want me to go back to the Christmas bauble? Or maybe I could look at some wrapping paper or sellotape. Maybe I could find a Jingle Bell sample. But I'd like you to put forward your suggestions for a one sound challenge for Christmas. And I'll show you the breakdown of the whole sound design on the samples. So, put me a comment in the comment box, and I think I will put up a vote on this as well. Remember, if you've made it this far and you want to see what I do with the Christmas challenge, you need to subscribe. And you obviously like half-arsed tutorials. If you know somebody else who would find this useful, let them know where it is. And make sure other people can find it by pressing the like button. Now, in the words of the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation, share and enjoy. Bye, kids!